Okay, this video is on the Move tool and then also other transformation tools that will allow you to rotate your image, rescale your image, or reflect your image, or skew your image. So we're going to go ahead and get started. The Move tool is the tool that we use to open up new images and to drag them into a new file. To do that, you go to File, Open. Okay, you want to make sure that you're in Photoshop when you do the File Open. You don't just want to go onto your desktop and double click that image, because sometimes it will open up in Preview, which is a different program, and you won't be able just to drag and drop. Okay, to do that again, you go to File, Open, you select the image that you want to open, and then you hit Open. Okay, and then you could just click on the image, or you could click on the layer and drag that over the tab where you want to put it in, and then if you hold down Shift and move towards your canvas, it'll center it within the canvas. Okay, now another thing that I want to emphasize is the options up here for the Move tool, and you'll notice that there's this auto select option. This auto select option, by default it should be on, and then the default here will be group. You don't tend to have groups unless you create these. Groups are basically these little folders that you can use to organize information in here. Okay, and these groups can be done by clicking this little folder down here and say create new group, and then basically within this group, kind of like a layer organizer, you can grab these images and you can just drag them and drop them into there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take it out by dragging it outside of that folder. Right, and I'm just going to move this down here so it doesn't get in my way. All right, but basically once you start getting a lot of layers, you want to start organizing your images inside these groups, and the reason is just so that it doesn't get very cluttered, and then sometimes you want to be able to move them together. So that leaves me back over here. Auto select. When you have auto select on, if I click on, I'm going to turn these three images on. Okay, I have this image, and this image. Okay, when auto select is clicked on, you can click directly on the image and it automatically toggles to that image layer. Okay, if I click on this one, it automatically toggles there, and if I click this one, it automatically toggles there. Okay, now right now it seems pretty logical as to why you would want to have this always function this way, but just like in other programs, there comes a point where there's a lot of layers, and sometimes you have transparency on the layers, or you have a lot of overlapping layers right next to each other that you can't easily click on an object and move it around. Okay, now that's problematic, because if you can't move things around by selecting them directly on the screen, then you need to have another way to do this. So what you can do is you can uncheck the auto select, and as long as you have your layers named correctly, then it should be fairly easy to locate the layer that you're trying to work on. And then you could just click here, say that I want to move the boy down here. If I click on him here, even if I'm selected on this leaf image, notice it's going to move the layer that I'm selected on in the layers palette. Okay, so a lot of times you'll see if by default this isn't checked on, because sometimes people move your settings if you're working in the lab, and you'll be wondering, why isn't it moving the one that I'm clicking on? By default it should be auto select on, so that it does move the object that you want to move upon clicking on it. But sometimes these settings will be changed. Okay, so if that's not doing what you want it to do, and say you're trying to move the boy and you're clicking on him and it's not working, you want to make sure that you go into auto select and click it on. Or similarly, when you don't want to auto select, you would want to click it off. Okay, now by default it's set to group, and that's assuming that you have groups here and that you click on one of these groups. You can grab an entire group and move it. Okay, if it starts grabbing the group and you're trying to select an image within the group, you might have to toggle this from group to layer. Okay, I'm going to show you an example. Say that I'm going to turn all of these off, and I'm going to go to this group that I have here. Okay, it has this image and this image in this group. Okay, by default this group is going to move, because by default this setting is right now set to group. Okay, so that means that even if I go in here and I grab this image, because it is set to group, both images are going to move. Notice the little icon, you can't really see it because it's hidden and it's the same size as the other one, but they both moved. Now notice it's right under there. Okay, now so if I move it this way, because it's set to group, if I move it this way, both of those images moved. You can see it in that preview. Notice that moved. All right, so if you have something in a group and you only want to move a certain image within that group, you need to remember to go into group and change this to layers. And then when you do layers, now if you go in here and click, or if you just click on the image, you can do that, you can do that, you can do that. And then if you want them to start moving again as a group so that they move together, you can do group, and now it'll move together. All right. Similarly, if you don't have things in group, but sometimes you're going to want to move images together also, you can go ahead and say that you have these two images. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the blend test group. And say you have these two images, and for whatever reason, you have this one placed exactly where you want it relative to the image beneath it, and you want them to move together. So what you could do is you could either click on one, and then you can hold down Shift and click on the other image. Notice I have auto select on, so it automatically detects what image I'm clicking on. And both layers got selected. Okay, and then I can move these around. Okay, and even though I'm on group, it doesn't really matter, because as long as I'm not clicking on an image that's in a group, it'll know to select that particular layer. Okay, so notice they move together. Now, there's going to be times where you always want these two images to move together, and instead of having to go in here and manually selecting that image and manually selecting this image and holding down Shift so that it grabs both of them, what you could do is, as long as you select both of the images that you want, there's this little link icon down here. I'm going to go ahead and click it, and you'll notice this little link appears. I'm going to unclick it again so you can see it. Remove it and add it. Okay. If you know you want certain images, whether it's 2 images, 3 images, 4 images to link together, then you want to do is make sure you select them first and then do the link box. Now, when you don't want them to move together any longer for whatever reason, you just need to remember to click on them again to select them and click on them again. Right. What you'll notice is I'm going to link them. I'm going to click on the group here. Now, notice if I ever go and I click back on these images, which are these two that are linked here, I'm going to click on one. It automatically grabs the image and it shows a little link mark. So even if I move that one, it still moves the other one. So no matter which one I grab, this one or this one, notice I'm on auto select, so it's grabbing one or the other. It toggles between which one I'm grabbing, but because they're linked, it moves both of them. Okay? Now, sometimes the images that you want to move around are further apart from one another. They're not right next to each other. I'm going to go ahead and unlink these right now, just for purposes of demonstration. Sometimes, say, this image can be down here, and you don't want all these images in between. You just want this one, and this one to link. What you want to do is you want to click on whichever one you want to select first, okay? And again, you could select them directly on here, or you can select it in the Layers palette. I'm going to go ahead and hold down Control, and that will grab this one. But Control will allow me to select the individual images, but I can skip over a group, and I can click here. And then what you'll notice is that it selected these two, and then it skipped over these two, and it selected these two. Had I have done that with the Shift key, let me show you what would happen. I'm going to click here. I'm going to hold down Shift and just click here, and then click here. Notice it got everything in between. So the Shift key allows you to grab elements in the layer palette and select multiple objects, but it does them all in a straight order from the first one you click to the last one that you click. But if you only want to do staggered ones like yes, yes, no, no, yes, in terms of selecting, then what you want to do is I'm going to click off of that, click, and again, the command key or the control key on a PC, click and click, all right? And then I can link those together, and then those will always move together, okay? You can see the little icon here moving around so that you know that they're moving together. Right now you can't see this image because it's kind of hidden behind everything, but it's back there, right there, okay? I'm going to go ahead and unlink this. Within your Move tool, things that you have are the ability to show transform controls, okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and click on just one of these, this image here. Notice you get these little handles where you can grab the edge of the photograph. This allows you to shrink an image or grow an image. So as long as you check this on, you'll get that. Otherwise, it'll remove it and you won't get that. So if you wanted to shrink this image, you would want to shrink, and then when you're done and you want to apply it, you can just hit return or enter. And now that image, you can just turn that off and it'll stay that way, okay? One important thing is if you're going to be experimenting with the size, you want to remember to turn this into a smart object, and to do that, you would want to undo this, okay, so that you have the original image. You would want to right click. You would want to convert it to a smart object, okay? When you're done doing all your manipulations, your size manipulations, you know, if you're done experimenting with your smart filters and all that, which you're going to learn about later on, then you can turn this back into a raster image, okay? But at least for sizing, while you're experimenting with the scaling, you should definitely convert it into a smart object, okay? And then rasterize it and convert it back into a regular image, all right? So now also with that show transform controls, what you can do with it is you can rotate the image, okay? You can rotate it. When you're done and you like the application of it, you can hit return. If you don't like the application of it, I'm going to go ahead. I just undid that. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this. I can click on any one of these tools. It doesn't matter what tool. And it'll ask if you want to apply or don't apply. And if I want to apply, it would be the equivalent of hitting enter or return. If I hit don't apply, it'll bring it back to normal. Okay? All right. Other ways that you can transform this. Under your edit, you can go to transform. You can go to scale here, so you can grow it and shrink it here. You can rotate it, which is what we did already. You could also skew it. All right. Skewing will allow you to grab parts of the image and do this, and do this, and do this, and this. Now you'll notice you're starting to manipulate the quality of the pixels. I don't recommend that you do this very much. It's just so that you know that it's there. Sometimes subtly you can do things like this, but it's not recommended because you're messing with the pixel data. If you're going to do this and you're going to experiment several times with this, it is in your best interest to make sure you convert this into a smart object ahead of time. Okay, so if you were going to do that, I would undo. I would right click. I would turn this into a smart object. And then I would go in here and edit, transform, and skew. Because this way, if you do a lot of this experimentation until you get it just right, you want to make sure that you're not degrading the pixel qualities as much. Okay, it's still degrading it, it's still distorting the image, but if you were to put it back into its original format, you wouldn't lose any of the quality as a smart object. All right, I'm going to go ahead and undo this. I'm going to leave it as a smart object since I'm going to do other manipulations. I'm going to go into edit. I'm going to go into transform again, and just to show you a few of these, you can do perspective. All right, and you can change that to make things look like they're on a road or a different plane. Okay. Return. All right, I'm going to undo that to show you a different one. Edit, transform. Oops. And distort. All right, undo. You can do transform. You can do warp. And this one gives you more little points, almost like a mesh tool where you can go in here and manipulate certain areas. This might work if you're trying to do something that looks like paper flying in the air or a photograph flying in the air. You could distort that. Now again, you're messing with the picture quality. Because it's a smart object, you're not destroying any pixel quality if you wanted to take it back to its original image. Okay, so at least as you experiment, keep it in the smart object. My rule of thumb is to use smart objects when I'm going to scale things and when I want to run smart filters that I can take away the filter and add it back in, which you'll learn about in that smart filters tutorial. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit return, and you can implement that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and undo that. Say that you want to reflect this image. Okay, what you can do is you can go into edit. You can go into transform again, and you can go flip horizontal. And what that basically does is it flipped it over. Now if I want to make this be down here at the bottom, I would go into edit, transform, and then do flip vertical. And notice it flipped over. So say that you want a character facing an opposite direction that you have it. Say he's kind of looking this way right now. You can select him. You can go edit, transform, and then you can flip him horizontal. All right. A few other things that we should cover. What you can do with these layers is when you have them in a certain position and you don't want them to move around, you can lock a certain layer in place here. All right. And that way it won't be movable. When you have the lock turned on, it'll give the little lock icon. Okay. You can move it around. I'm going to go ahead and unlock it. Okay. You can also change the opacity, as you noticed. Make something transparent. Okay. And you can rename layers. You just go ahead and double click right over the text area. Make sure not to click on the side because that'll do something else. Go ahead and double click where the name is, and then you can rename it. Okay, which will be required to do. And similarly, you can also rename the groups by just double clicking in that area. Okay. All right, that's pretty much it. That concludes your lesson on the Move tool, some transformations, and some layer and group options. If you have any questions, please be sure to contact me.